Saturday in Simpsonville, South Carolina. We're in Exodus chapter 17. God has provided graciously for the people of Israel both manna and quail. And the next problem that they come into is what? The next problem after they say they don't have enough to eat, they get manna and quail. What's the next problem that they find in chapter 17? Second question. What do we learn from the fight with the Amaleks? What do we learn from the fight with the Amaleks? The Amaleks attacked Israel as they were in the wilderness, and there was a fight there, and we find Joshua mentioned in Scripture here. What do we learn from that fight? Question number 3. What did Moses do that perhaps we ought to do after the fight? What did Moses do that we probably ought to do after the fight? Well, this is really an interesting chapter again, because here the people are murmuring again to Moses, quarreling with him, which indicates it was more than murmuring this time, about not having enough to drink. Now, had God provided drink when they needed it? Yes, he had. Were they thirsty? Probably. Was their complaint with Moses? Was it Moses' fault that they didn't have anything to drink? No, of course not. They saw him as the leader, and so they took out their complaints with him. Leadership takes broad shoulders, and many times we fail to remember that. Question number 1 was, what was the problem? It was a lack of water, and Moses was the one that was taking all the heat, and he did in verse 4 what we ought to always do whenever we find ourselves in conflict and quarrels. Go to the Lord about it. Go to the Lord about it. And then in verses 5 and 6, God gives direct instructions to Moses on exactly how to get water for the people. And God didn't make a big thing of it. He just said, okay, Moses, get some elders together, parade in front of the people, take the rod that you had, and bring it over and strike this specific rock, and water flowed out, and everybody had water. What do we learn about the battle when the Amaleks fought against the nation of Israel? Well, first of all, the picking of leadership is very important. And Moses had observed Joshua as being someone that was good with people, a good leader, and a great warrior. And so he selected Joshua, and he told Joshua to go pick his team. Go find the team that you feel like you need in order to win this battle. And then we see very clearly that all battles of every kind, whether they be physical battles or whether they be battles of the mind and of the flesh, we find that God is the one that has to direct us, but it's a team effort for those of us that are fighting. And we see Moses up on a rock, his arms get heavy, his assistants have to hold his arms up so that Joshua can prevail. Now, this is not to teach us superstition about if we go into battle with another country that we have to do a certain thing other than pray to God, that we be taking the right stand and that we fight in a righteous manner. But it's a team effort. None of us are islands unto ourselves. We can all use help from each other. And it's a team effort. And we always have a team spirit about doing something. Our church is getting ready to do a couple of big programs, and the list of all of the different kinds of workers they need has been published, and people have been asked to volunteer based on their gifts and talents, because it's a team effort. It's a team effort. Now, what did Moses do that we all ought to do after a battle? Moses built an altar. You say, Pastor, you mean I should go around building altars? No, not necessarily a physical altar. But Moses did it for a reason. He built an altar so that the following generations would know how God had delivered them through this battle with Amalek. Sometimes when we have battles in our lives, whether it's over employment, whether it's over economic issues, whether it's with dealing with family or health, when we have a victory, sometimes we need to drive down a stake. Now, I don't mean literally a physical stake in the ground, but we ought to make a special note of it in a spiritual notebook, or we ought to make special recognition of it so that our children and our children's children might know that we wrestled with this subject or this object or this difficulty, and that we had victory, and the victory was through the Lord, and we give him all of the credit for the victory, and we can see where we've come from. Many times we fail to remember the good stuff and only remember the bad stuff, and sometimes we remember only the good stuff and forget the bad stuff. But nevertheless, it's nice to have some stakes driven down to look back and say, I had victory over that. Whether it was losing weight, or whether it was a job, or whether it was problem with children or mates, we can look back and say, I had victory over that. Drive down a stake so that you can say, this is where I've been. And probably not a bad idea to chronicle it so that future generations might see that you struggled with some things just like they struggle with some things, but through God you found victory. That's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a wonderful day.